Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I'd like to talk about lessons for gay men from the On the Boulevard musical. So, today I'd like to share a different kind of perspective where instead of speaking from my role as a long-term, 31 years in 2023, specialist, psychotherapist, sex therapist, and life, career, relationship coach for gay men and gay male relationships worldwide, I'd like to share a little bit about how those professional roles overlap with my avocation, or my hobby, which is composing music and creative writing. So I've written a young adult novel, which is in its final stages, more about that later, and I've already published a self-help book in 2013 for a general audience that's not gay-specific called Self-Empowerment, Have the Life You Want. That's about how to close the gap between how life is and how you'd like it to be in important areas of life, such as your mental health, finances, relationship, and community. And that's available on Amazon.com or Lulu, Lulu.com. So that's called Self-Empowerment, Have the Life You Want. I think it's like $12 on paperback, if you're interested in that. But the largest project over the past 7 years in my creative writing is that I've written a full-length musical play with an LGBT theme, more specifically focused on gay men, called On the Boulevard. And that title refers to Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood, California, the historic boys' town frequented by gay men with its various gay-friendly bars and restaurants and shops for just decades in the history of Los Angeles. So I served as writing the book, which is the spoken script of the musical, as well as writing the music and the lyrics, with lots of help on the musical arrangements from some very treasured colleagues who are professional music arrangers and composers themselves. So just a few months ago, in May of 2023, I released what's called a concept album of the musical, which is an album of all the songs in the musical score, professionally recorded by local actors in Los Angeles, working very generously for very little money, but contributing an enormous amount of talent. And I produced the album at a couple of local recording studios in Los Angeles. So a concept album of a musical is a full score recording of the show, with the songs telling the story in order, but it lacks the spoken dialogue between scenes. The concept album often can precede a larger scale production on stage. The musicals Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, Jesus Christ Superstar, Evita, and Jekyll and Hyde, and I think some others, all started as concept albums before their first stagings in either London's West End or New York's Broadway theaters. I'm hoping at some point the concept album can inspire a theater company or a producer to mount a full production of the show on stage. So today I'd like to share more about the story of the musical and its relevance to my work supporting gay men's mental health and well-being, and some of what the multi-year experience of creating the concept album has been like. This is about pursuing your dreams and goals and seeing them through, even if they take a long time. And this could apply to anyone with any dream or goal. Again, it's called On the Boulevard, and if you find it helpful, you can hear the entire concept album on Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, or other music streaming services. A physical CD with the liner notes, which is a little paper booklet in a CD jewel case that contains a synopsis or a summary of the full plot and story, along with pictures of the actors who appear on the album, is available for sale, and I'll give more information on how you can get one later on. On the Boulevard is actually a modern retelling of the classic story from a play by George Bernard Shaw, an Irish playwright, called Pygmalion, 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 from 1914. But most people know this story from its original musical adaptation called My Fair Lady, which was a huge hit on Broadway and in London in about 1956. It's how one of the first shows for Julie Andrews, who became famous for musicals like the Sound of Music movie later on. The original story is set in Edwardian London in the early 1900s, and it's about a young woman named Eliza Doolittle who sells little bouquets of violets in the streets of London outside the Covent Garden Opera House for spare change. And she's noticed by Henry Higgins, who is a professor of phonetics, which is the science of speech. And Henry is fascinated by Eliza's strong Cockney accent, just as he runs into his colleague in the field, Colonel Pickering, and they discuss their mutual fascination with this woman from the street. So Henry Higgins boasts that with his skills as a phonetician, he's kind of an egomaniac, he could teach the young woman upper-class proper speech, and no one would know that she came from such a low station in life. And Colonel Pickering bets him that he can't do it, and then Eliza moves into Henry's house and starts taking phonetics lessons, all overseen by Henry's housekeeper, who tries to keep Henry in line, Mrs. Pierce. And Eliza wants the lessons because she knows that if she can learn to speak proper like, she could be a sales lady in a flower shop instead of selling flowers out in the streets. And that's her goal. Well, hijinks ensue, and spoiler alert, Henry does indeed train Eliza in her speech and her demeanor, and gives her a dramatic makeover in the process. And a young man her own age, named Freddie, falls for her while she's out in polite society. And Henry, who's, kind of implied to maybe be gay, has very mixed feelings for Eliza, and she for him, in sort of a love triangle with Freddie. So it's ultimately, for 1914, a very progressive piece on women's liberation at a time when this was very oppressed in society. Eliza learns to be a very independent woman who can stand up for herself, which was really a progressive idea at that time. So Shaw was ahead of his time on that, and he was also a very sardonic essayist who liked to good-naturedly gripe about things, kind of like Andy Rooney, the curmudgeonly commentator on CBS's 60 Minutes TV show for many years. He's long gone now, I think, but he always started with his little segments called, "Did you ever notice that blah, blah, blah?" And so he would gripe about something in this very funny way. But Shaw's many essays questioned the customs of the day, and he wrote Pygmalion in part to question why people in London harshly judged each other and created this social status system based on how someone spoke, where the various and many London dialects gave away your social position and socioeconomic status, sometimes within neighborhoods just a few blocks from each other. All had different accents, to this day even. And the title of Pygmalion comes from Greek mythology, where a sculptor named Pygmalion creates a statue in stone of a beautiful woman, Galatea, and she comes to life. And Shaw did a modern retelling of that story, and I did the same thing yet again. In my modern version, I took Shaw's questioning about social status via speech, and I reset the story in modern-day West Hollywood, where I examine the phenomenon of gay men judging each other by the aesthetics of their physique, their body, where the better or idealized physique was at the top of the social status. And this is true in Hollywood movies, too, where many of the gay men who live in West Hollywood work in Los Angeles' broader film and television industry. So in my version, instead of Eliza Doolittle, the flower girl in Edwardian London, we have a young gay man, Eli Dillingham, who is an overweight and not very sophisticated guy from the American Midwest. He's from Ohio. And he, like so many, comes to West Hollywood to try to find a way to get in shape and spruce himself up and find some kind of work in Hollywood. And he gets the attention of Robert Riggins, who is a celebrity personal fitness trainer to the stars, who trains young actors who appear in superhero movies. And I changed all the names, but it's kind of inspired by the story of Taylor Lautner, the actor who gained all this muscle to play in the Twilight movies, or Chris Hemsworth, who bulked up to play Thor, or Chris Evans, who has a gay brother, by the way, to play Captain America, and so on. And Eli and Robert meet in a fictional West Hollywood bar called the Bling Lounge, and Eli moves in with Robert. Robert starts training Eli, this time overseen by Concha, Robert's housekeeper, and Robert trains Eli and transforms his physique in the gym, and Eli gets cast as Astro Man, the new blockbuster superhero movie, and the rest of the story goes from there with a love triangle, this time with a young gay server in West Hollywood named Teddy at a West Hollywood restaurant. And it's all narrated by a fabulous black drag queen named Elphaba. It's kind of taken from Wicked, who guides us through the story. There were shows like Cabaret and Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat that also had narrators. Some musicals do that. So how does it all end? Well, you'll have to listen to the score for that, which has a variety of big company numbers, duets and solos and comedy songs. And Eli was played by a terrific young actor in LA, Michael D'Elia, whom I found when he did Dorian, a musical version of The Picture of Dorian Gray, which was an Oscar Wilde, gay novelist, or gay playwright too, from the 1890s, with pretty prominent gay themes, even for back then. Michael has one of the best theater voices that I've ever heard, and the guy playing Robert, Ryland Shelton, also has a beautiful voice, and he's a vocal coach in LA. And we were very lucky to assemble this great cast of men and women over the long term. Michael actually recorded his last song on the album almost 7 years after he recorded his first one, because it all took a really long time for me writing and recording on the weekends because I was working in my practice during the week. So let's talk a little bit about having a passion project. In addition to having a creative outlet really just for fun, I also learned a lot in this process. I learned about the importance of having a passion project or a labor of love, which may or may not have any commercial success, but was valuable for me as a personal expression and interpersonally with all the great people I met, from the actors to the music arrangers to recording studio engineers who are geniuses, and so many others. So think about your own creative endeavors. Do you have any? Have you ever tried writing a play or a novel, or writing music or painting or sculpting or playing an instrument? What was that like for you? Was it all fun, or was it a mixed experience of good and bad? One of the things that I learned was about persistence over time, rewriting, editing, having critique discussions with friends, and creating collaborative relationships with strangers who became creative work friends. And most of it was great, but I also learned how strong emotions can come up with things like this. I had lots of advice from friends who were entertainment professionals in LA, including a former sitcom writer, a Broadway and feature film director, an off-Broadway playwright, a working actress and producer, other composers and arrangers, a very famous music producer, and also friends not in the entertainment business, but who gave a perspective as a potential audience member when they heard one song at a time. And some of it wasn't so great. One actor did a great job with two of his songs, but mysteriously, with one of his two songs, I mean, and then mysteriously quit to focus on other things without much explanation. And maybe he didn't want to be associated with a specifically gay-themed project, and we had to find another actor to re-record both his first song and his second and third song, so they all sounded, from the same voice for the same character. In some cases, I think the professionals, with varying degrees of success, were quite discouraging because they found it nervy, or cheeky was the word used, that this dude here, meaning me, who was not a trained musician or any kind of entertainment professional, although I do have a degree in theater from UCLA from long before I became a therapist, that I had the gall to attempt to write a musical. I think the professionals sometimes wanted to put the amateur in his place. I think it triggered their insecurities somehow, even if I was grateful for their good advice. But I had to evaluate the advice I got and take some of it and leave the rest. Alcoholics Anonymous says that, take what you want and leave the rest. And I had to learn how to do that because people are generous, to look at your stuff or read it or hear it and give their advice. But you also have to think about where it's coming from, and you have to use some critical thinking about feedback. And you actually do have to decide which advice to take and which to leave aside. And at one point, I got so discouraged by their suggested changes, sometimes huge changes, like, change the whole concept, that the project didn't feel like it was mine anymore. And I took a long hiatus from it, several months, and then came back and I did a full rewrite, incorporating some of their suggestions, but also knowing that I had to write what was important to me and not feel like it was someone else's project that I was trying to chase down. And maybe you've had that feeling. That you have to take advice from others and give it very careful consideration, especially if you respect the credentials of that person advising you. But ultimately, as cliche as it sounds, you have to be true to yourself. Whether it's your choice of clothing, or your career, or your partner, or how you live. And gay men are especially good at bringing critical thinking to others' demands of us, especially all the heterosexist pressures we face when we're growing up gay in a generally homophobic society. Another part of critical thinking that was a topic throughout this project was how Shaw, in his writing, held a mirror up to society and was critical of what he saw. He thought it was kind of shallow and stupid to judge people based on how they speak. But isn't it also kind of shallow and even stupid to judge gay men by the aesthetics of their physique in some kind of social hierarchy? I mean, sure, being in shape and exercising to have cardiovascular health and eating nutritiously can stave off certain very common health risks like heart disease, diabetes, even some forms of cancer. But that's more of a health thing. How often have we seen the really mean kind of fat shaming in gay male communities? And this can be very hurtful to heavier gay men who wanted to receive support from their gay male peers in gay neighborhoods and gay gyms and gay enclaves, only to take shit from their peers the way homophobic straight people might treat all of us. And this was a concern throughout writing this, and it was my fear that I was writing an entire opus to fat shaming. And that wasn't the intention, and the end of the story discusses this without trying to preach too much about the message. But it does reflect the reality of gay male enclaves, and certainly of Hollywood movies, where very consistently the superheroes might vary in ethnicity. We had Black Panther, we've got Superman, we've got the Latino in Blue Beetle. But they all have in common especially idealized, muscular Adonis-like physiques that show heroism and strength and nobility of character, and just being sexy eye candy in a skin-tight, colorful suit. We have to be very careful about associating good looks with nobility of character, and average or below average in the traditional standards of beauty with negative traits or even the evil villain. As Glinda says in the classic film of The Wizard of Oz, only bad witches are ugly. And I have a previous episode that discusses the role of appearance privilege in the gay male community, and what it is and how we collectively deal with it. So Shaw, in his social critique, is really asking us to do better, not to let the bad habits of society judging the character of people for superficial reasons stand. He's asking us to reflect on what our society does, not what it should do, but what it does, and how we feel about it. How else could Eliza be a success to have a good job in London without having a characteristic upper-class accent? He's asking us to at least consider it. I'm sort of doing the same thing. In real life, our heroes don't all wear capes. They don't all look muscular in a spandex costume. They don't have supernatural powers. They have talents that are very much of this earth. Let's talk a bit about discipline. One of the other huge things that I learned in this process was about discipline. The story reflects this too, where Eli has to really buckle down and have the discipline to transform his physique according to the goals that he's set for himself. Although, there remains some pressure from Robert and the others. I learned that I had to challenge myself to take whatever yet unproven talent for writing music and lyrics and dialogue and challenge myself to do the best I could, to write the best musical that I was capable of, even if it didn't get anywhere near the level of legendary Broadway creators like Richard Rodgers, Oscar Hammerstein, Jerry Herman, Stephen Sondheim, Stephen Schwartz, John Kander and Fred Ebb, Andrew Lloyd Webber, and so many others. Songs were written and rewritten to make better rhymes or more poetic language. Some songs were recorded for the album in the studio, and then they were discarded and replaced with hopefully better songs, even if that means getting rid of a big investment of work, just as Broadway composers do. And when I knew that a song or a lyric or a joke just didn't work, out it went. Ouch, cut it out. It has to go. So think about when you've challenged yourself to be at your best. When good enough won't do, even though we occasionally discuss the importance of the good enough partner or the good enough employee. That's a very healthy challenge for growth when we ask ourselves, is this really the best I can do? And if it's not, you owe it to yourself and maybe others that your work affects to try it again. We don't beat up on ourselves. We don't wallow in our frustrations. We just accept the challenge to do better, and then we do. I learned about collaboration with others. Musicals have always been a lesson in creative collaboration, often with separate people writing the lyrics, the music, the book, in addition, of course, to a set designer, a costume designer, an orchestrator, a choreographer, a stage manager, a company manager, and so many people that all help to put on a show at any theater that you would visit. It's a huge challenge for everyone to step up and show up and be reliable and bring your A game all the time. That is one of the many great aspects of theater and television and film production too, where everyone has to be especially reliable and talented and indefatigable and consistent, or the show just doesn't happen. When I work with guys who are my therapy clients in the entertainment industry in Los Angeles, I'm amazed at stories on how my writer clients can finish a script for a TV episode, and in 3 days the locations are scouted, special sets are built, costumes are prepared, props and actors are cast and fitted and rehearsed, and they're ready to start shooting in just that shorter time, in just a few days. And that takes coordination and enormous discipline of the different crafts of everyone involved. And that's just taken for granted, week by week, episode by episode. And it's the consistency of drive and focus. I also learned by doing. I often say with this project, if I had known when I started how much work it was going to be, and actually budget too, I don't think I would have started. But once I did, I was determined to see it through, not just for the creative process, but also for the discipline, so that I know that when I need to, I can see things through. My graduate school experience and the process for becoming licensed as a therapist and a certified sex therapist were also similar mountains to climb. You just keep pushing through toward your goal. Think about the experiences you've had where you've really had to bring it. Can you allow yourself to have an appreciation for that? We can just reflect and be proud that good things take time, but we're all given gifts that make our efforts helpful to someone. Now, I won't spoil the whole story for you, but like most musicals, with the possible exception of West Side Story, they do tend to have happy endings, even if it perhaps wasn't the happy ending we were originally looking for. So whether it's Shaw in London or me with West Hollywood, I ask the audience to reflect on how they feel about what they see, about the way things are. Collectively, as a society, and more specifically as a gay men's community, what do we want to keep? What do we want to change? About things like fashion, or what it means to be popular, or notoriety or the social politics of admiration and acceptance. Just recently in the news, there's been a scandal about the very heavy Lizzo, the singer and flautist, singing about the importance of self-acceptance at any size, and then allegedly shaming some of her own dancers for being heavy themselves. The theme of acceptance is always a bit relative. Think about, to what degree do you accept yourself as you are? What would you change about yourself? What would you keep just as you are? Hint, there's a song about that in the show. When I do work with gay men who are heavy and want to embark on a fitness project for themselves, I'm not a personal trainer, but I help guys through cognitive behavioral therapy with the mental health aspects of what that project might mean for them, using lots of critical thinking, not to do what society demands of you, but what you want to do for you as you define it. We have to start from a place of patience and self-compassion and self-love, and validating our worth first as human beings. And then if we want to shape a little here and reshape a little there with our bodies, that's secondary to the primary role of the importance of self-acceptance based on what's inside. We all lose social standing eventually if we base it on appearance alone. One of my personal friends in LA was a Hollywood heartthrob in the 80s, a model who was adored by straight women and gay men alike. He won some kind of genetic lottery that made him really stand out as a beautiful young man. But what's better is that he's also a warm and generous and compassionate and very funny and down-to-earth and generous and kinky gay man. So, he's not the heartthrob of years gone by now, although he's still very handsome, but all the other qualities that he always had remain. The lyrics of one of the songs in the show says, "Just as I am is all that I can be. As I am with imperfections, conversations with reflections, don't need negotiations, let it be. Loving what I see, just as I am, it's the only way I can, the only way I want to be." Let's talk about a tough lesson. I also learned about the importance of acceptance in another way. You see, the project overall has not been a success. I released it to the streaming services and worked to get some press on it with the help of an online publicist, but it really hasn't been successful widely. No producers or theater companies to date have asked to license the show to produce it for a stage production yet. No product has asked for one of the songs to be a commercial jingle. Even the city of West Hollywood, my own home, what the musical is about, took no interest in it at all. And friends and colleagues that I sent a copy of the CD to were generally silent. One friend I sent a song to from high school wrote back and said, "I'm glad you found a hobby." What do you take from that? Apparently she didn't like it. So the friends who critiqued the show didn't say much when it came out, and even the actors, for the most part, have kind of let the whole thing pass. Because of my practice and my relationship and my health, I'm moving on to other things. I just don't have the time or the money or the patience to revamp it all into something yet again that's more accepted by the mainstream. It's very hard to get a book published. Between 1% and 2% of all books that are written get published, and even fewer sell more than 100 copies. And many more TV pilots get written that ever get sold or made or taken to series, or screenplays. Of actors, only a small percentage make any money at all according to their union statistics. I've learned, more than I already did, that anything in the entertainment industry or all of the arts has a very low percentage of robust success. There's just too much competition. It's just all too fun to employ everyone who wants to contribute creatively. Society's interests change, tastes change, cultures change. Yesterday's popular is today's canceled. And that's been a hard lesson to learn, but despite that, I think I'd do it all over again. because I didn't do it for reaping wild sums of money from royalties like Les Miserables or Wicked have worldwide with touring companies all over the world. I did it because, like Shaw, I had something to say, and I wanted to say it musically, in part as an homage to my great-grandfather, who was a violinist and conductor and music director on Broadway in the 1920s, and his daughter, my great-aunt, Esther Howard, who played in big Broadway musicals from 1920 to 1929 before having a 30-year career in Hollywood, making over 110 films between 1930 and 1952. Recently, a clip from one of her movies in the 40s became an Instagram meme. You know, I had big family shoes to fill, and it was worth a shot. So if you're in doubt about going for it in a special project that you're inspired to do, I say please do it. Even if, like mine, it never really gets traction. I didn't get this show's message to a big audience. The message came to me, and that's enough. We have to follow our romantic notions. There's a previous episode on that, too. To give life flavor and challenge and reward, even if it's not the reward we were originally looking for. I'm happy and grateful to allow my creative expressions to be weekend hobbies and stick to my real job of being a therapist and a coach. And I thank the local and the global community of gay men for allowing me to be of help through all these years. If you'd like help for your own dreams and goals, consider therapy if you're in California, where I'm licensed, or life, career, and relationship coaching from anywhere in the world. We work via the Zoom platform. And I can explain some important legal and ethical differences between the professional services of psychotherapy and coaching when we talk. They overlap, but there are some very important differences. And if you'd like a copy of your own of the limited run of the CDs that I made for On the Boulevard, let me know that too. They are $25, which includes all the shipping and handling, and I hope you enjoy that. But just email me or text me or call me and let me know, and we can talk about how you can pay on Venmo or PayPal or Cash App or one of those, and I'll send it to you. So visit gaytherapyla.com or gaycoachingla.com for more information about my services and my blog library of hundreds of blog articles you might find interesting. Email me at ken@gaytherapyla.com or call or text 310-339-5778. That's 310-339-5778, either on your phone or on WhatsApp for more information about becoming a client. And if you have suggestions for future podcast episodes, let me know that too. And spread the word about the podcast if you have gay male friends you think might benefit from hearing some of these episodes. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.